Hello, my name is Tawana Kane, and welcome to Staying Grounded, Implementing and Practicing Trauma-Informed Mindfulness. I really do hope that this workshop will not just offer tangible tools that you can use both in your classroom and in your life, but also to be a respite for you today at the end of this conference. So thank you so much. So our main goal here today is to learn how mindfulness addresses resilience and socio-emotional learning. So I like to start by just pausing. We often are so busy in our lives as we go from place to place or meeting to meeting or virtual encounter to virtual encounter, and we don't just stop. We don't pause. And so what I would love to do is just give you an opportunity to settle. It also gives us an opportunity to orient ourselves to hearing the sound of the bell. And so we use that sound just to bring ourselves here together collectively. We use that sound to remind ourselves to just stop, to take a breath, to observe what's happening in our body and our mind, and then proceed. So just a brief 5 to 15 seconds can really transition your day. So I usually start any workshop with an offering of poetry. I find it gives real insight into the topic at hand, which for today is mindfulness. Walk Slowly by Dana Folds. It only takes a reminder to breathe, a moment to be still. And just like that, something in me settles, softens, makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life isn't a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. As many times as I forget, catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe, and be, and walk slowly into the mystery. So that poem is the beginning of our created definition of mindfulness, and we'll continue that now. So a formal definition of mindfulness is often helpful just to contextualize what the experience is. And Sylvia Bornstein's definition is one of the best. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is the aware, balanced acceptance of the present experience. It isn't any more complicated than that. It is the opening to or receiving the present moment, pleasant or unpleasant, just as it is, without either clinging to it or rejecting it. So being able to be present to whatever life offers us without judgment. A really tall order, but one that we will begin to unpack as we move forward this afternoon. So I'm curious what your relationship to mindfulness is, what you know about it, what you've heard about it. So if you can take a moment just to respond to this poll, that would be fantastic. Some of the things that I know about mindfulness is that it is not about one way of being, but it's really about an attitude that we bring to everything we do in life, that we bring to our encounters, that we bring to our meetings, that we bring to our family, that we bring to ourselves. And these 12 qualities really begin to highlight what mindfulness is and what it can be. And so as you look at these 12 qualities, one or two may stick out to you. often what happens, people look at number 2 and they say, non-striving. What is that? What does that mean? Particularly in a Western culture where we are very goal-oriented and we are always pushing to the next thing. It is difficult to think about non-striving, but it does not mean living a life without goals. Instead, it simply means to live your life and approach your goals with a sense of finesse. So that if I have a circle and a square object, I could spend all day trying to force this square into the circle. But if I take a moment to carve the edges of the square, it will go in with great ease, right? So it is using wisdom, using space, using finesse to move towards our goals instead of charging forward. As you look at this list of mindfulness qualities, I just want you to think about which one comes with greatest ease for you. When you wake up in the morning, you are gentle. When you wake up in the morning, you embody patience. What is it that comes with greatest ease for you? And then take a moment to notice what is difficult for you. What do you look at here and go, oh, I don't know about that one? And then once you've deciphered which is most difficult and which comes to you with great ease, it just gives you a little bit of insight as to how you might approach things in life. For me, I find that letting go can be extremely difficult. Sometimes I just want to hold someone accountable. But when I release, when I let go, I too feel freedom. And so just noticing that, noticing how these qualities do or don't show up for you in your life. So it's really lovely to see what your relationship is with mindfulness. Some people practice personally, some use it in their classroom, others, almost half of you, have done some reading on mindfulness. And then a quarter of you don't know very much about mindfulness at all. And that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. So one of the things that gives us insight to the mindfulness practice is actually practicing. And as I said at the beginning, it is my goal to not just give you tools, but to also give you an experience that helps to settle your mind, your body, and your heart. And so we will enter into a mindfulness practice today, wherever you are in the virtual world. So we'll begin with a body scan. I invite you to sit in a way that allows your body to feel at ease and comfortable. If you're seated in a chair, just allowing the chair to truly support your back. You're also welcome for the next 3 or 4 minutes to lie on the floor if that feels comfortable to you. Just sitting in a way that honors your body, sitting in a way that allows yourself to feel truly supported. And if it feels right to you, allowing your eyes to close. If that doesn't feel right for you, you're welcome to leave them open. And as you sit here, just taking a few deep breaths. As you inhale in and exhaling out. Inhaling deeply and exhaling softly. Inhaling here and exhaling now. Just a nice steady breath. And as you continue to breathe, beginning to bring some attention to your toes. Now, our toes are probably not something that we spend a lot of time thinking about or giving attention to. But just for a moment, taking this moment to feel your toes and to notice any sensation in the toes. Perhaps noticing air moving over your toes if you're barefoot, or the snug fit of a sock or shoe. Perhaps noticing warmth or dampness. Perhaps noticing tingling. What sensations are present for you in your toes? And with an exhale, releasing the toes and drawing your attention to the soles of both feet. Allow your field of awareness to expand to include the tops of the feet, the ankles, the heels. Our feet, which move us around from place to place all day long, that supports our being all day long. Just noticing any sensations present for you in your feet. Perhaps what you're most aware of is the lack of sensation, and that's okay. Just noticing. And with an exhale, releasing the feet and ankles and drawing your attention to your legs. Continuing to include the knees. And again, just noticing any sensation in this area of your body. Warmth, coolness, tingling, burning. Perhaps there's just a great sense of ease and openness. What sensations are present for you in your legs and knees? And with an exhale, releasing the legs and knees and drawing your attention to your thighs. Continuing to expand the field of awareness to include the buttocks and pelvis. And just noticing any sensation in these areas of your body. Taking time here with the quadricep that is made up of so many major muscles and ligaments. What sensations are present? How is this area of your body feeling? And with an exhale, releasing the thighs, buttocks, and pelvis, and drawing your attention to your lower back. Often this is an area of our body that feels compressed or tight. And so just noticing any sensation that is present for you in your lower back. And if you find that you are experiencing tightness or pain, just showing a kind attention to that discovery without trying to shift or change. Remembering that Sylvia Boorstein definition, just being present with what is, pleasant or unpleasant. Just noticing, building the strength of our awareness. And with an exhale, releasing the lower back and allowing your attention to move to the mid-back and upper back. Include the shoulders. Letting your field of awareness expand to include the chest, the rib cage, the belly. So that you are now noticing sensations in your entire torso, and perhaps even sensations in the internal organs. And with an exhale, releasing the torso and drawing your attention to your arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, and hands. Noticing any sensation that is present for you in the arms. A sense of heaviness or lightness, tingling. And with an exhale, releasing the arms and shoulders and drawing your attention to the neck, to the face, the chin, the nose, eyes, forehead, top of the head, back of the head, and ears. Noticing any sensation in the face. And with an exhale, releasing the face. And just being aware of your body as a whole, from the top of your head, through the tips of your fingers, through the tips of your toes. Sensing your body here as a whole. And leaning into your capacity for wholeness, despite what is happening around you. Just continuing to breathe here with your body, aware of sensations, until you hear the bell. And when you can no longer hear the bell, allowing your eyes to open. So part of our experience of mindfulness are these practices, this ability to bring awareness to our body, to bring awareness to our thoughts, to bring awareness to our actions and the impact of those actions on ourselves and others. We are constantly building and strengthening this muscle of awareness throughout our mindfulness exposure. We also learn in mindfulness through the process of inquiry, so that when we experience a practice like the body scan, we also spend time noticing what happened. So right now, just notice, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are you aware of? What did you notice in that experience? That process of inquiring into our experience is where the true wisdom begins to bubble up. And so the practice is very important, but the talking about and the inquiring into the practice is equally as important. So why? Why mindfulness? I will say that I have been working with mindfulness for over 18 years and have worked with juvenile hall populations, school populations, hospital populations. And I have found across the board that mindfulness really allows us to be much more present to our experience, much more present to those around us, and just can enormously impact our lives. And then also it moves out to affect the lives of others. So one of the reasons that we move towards mindfulness is because we all experience stress, right? We have our own personal sources of stress that we bring to our interactions, to our classrooms, to our schools. And then we also experience the stress of our students, the stress of our parents, right? So we get sort of that vicarious experience of stress as well. And that just begins to compound itself. So just thinking about some of the stressors that you experience on a day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year basis as a professional, but also as a human being, right? Stressors of health, which is very prevalent for all of us during this pandemic time. Stress of parents and keeping them healthy, stress of having children if you have them, the stress of money or the lack thereof or not having enough of it, right? The stress over things that you cannot control. Just take a moment to think about some of the things that cause you stress in your life. And even as you think about them in this moment, notice how the body begins to tense a little bit. The shoulders get a little higher. The jaw begins to clench. And just be aware of how even the thought of some of these stressors can cause tension and holding in our bodies. So what William James offers to this is that our greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. So once we begin to open up choice, then we can decrease some of the stress that enters into our lives on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So when we experience stress, we call this red dye moments, right? And when we are experiencing this, particularly in a school environment, we call this flipping one's lid. So if we think about our hand here as our brain, if you will, and we've got this sort of front part here as the prefrontal cortex. That's the mayor of our brain. That is the part of our brain that controls executive functioning. But often what happens when we experience a stressor, we flip our lid and our amygdala, which is the emotional center within our brain, takes over and says, let me take charge. Let me control this. Let me handle this. And then we are not acting with the most rational part of our being. So you might, as soon as I say that, begin to go, yes, I know when Johnny flips his lid. Or yes, I know when Aretha flips her lid. Right? So we can see this happen on a day-to-day basis in our lives. We can call these red dye moments. And we call them red dye moments because they come into our lives and they color our entire being. We are not able to think or see clearly because we have this stressor that's taking over. So imagine all the stressors in your life. Each one is a drop of red dye. And you take those 12 or 14 stressors and you drop them into a glass of water. The entire glass of water turns red, yes? But then you take those 12 or 14 stressors and you put them in an aquarium. And that barely affects the water. Maybe the water turns a pinkish color. And then you take those 12 or 14 drops and you drop them into a lake. The effect is imperceptible. Right? You don't even notice it because the lake is spacious enough to withstand those 12 to 14 red drops, those 12 to 14 stressors. So one of the things that we can do through mindfulness is to grow our capacity so that no matter what comes into our life, what stressors enter in the form of this red dye, we are able to withstand, right? We are able to be aware that this stressor has entered, and we can make a wise choice in how we handle it. So I want you to think of a red dye moment that you've had in the last 24 to 48 hours. It could be as simple as someone cutting you off when you're driving. It could be more complex than that. But just think of something that has caused you some stress, right, or some overwhelm in the past 24 to 48 hours. What did you do to regain your composure? So as you respond to that, we will keep moving forward. And so in mindfulness, one of the things that we suggest is that you think about becoming the lake in your day-to-day lives, becoming the lake, becoming this spacious body of water that can just take in these red dye moments without being entirely overwhelmed. It's not that it does not affect the lake, but it does not completely make it turbulent, right? It's still able to maintain some sense of calm. And if you think about the very depth of that lake, it is still, regardless of what's happening on the top of it, regardless of the red dye that might be floating on the very top of the water, the bottom is absolutely still, right? It's grounded. So some of us took a deep breath, half of us, yes. We also used as an outlet people to talk to, so 13% of you said that. Sometimes a glass of wine is just what we need to go do, and that is completely understandable. Connecting with nature, going out for a walk is also very helpful. So just noticing how other people might respond to these red dye moments. So I'd like to offer you one additional mindfulness practice before we begin to break apart how these practices might be applied in your classrooms or in your lives. So this is the 3-minute breathing space, and I'm actually going to bring in a little bit of the lake analogy to this experience. And so for our final time together, we will allow our eyes to close, sitting in a way that honors your body, that allows you to feel alert. So sitting tall without being rigid, allowing your body to be fluid. And again, just starting by taking a few deep breaths as you inhale in and exhale out. And just taking a moment to picture in your mind a lake or some body of water. It could be blue or green, muddy or clear. And just noticing how the lake is held in the basin of the earth, supported. And as you continue to breathe, just allowing this image of a lake to enter into your being so that you almost become one with the lake. Breathing as the lake. Tapping into your inner resources, your boundless sense of capaciousness. And notice as thoughts come and go, impulses come and go, how that might disturb the quality of your mind, how that might disturb the surface of your lake. Is that okay? Is it part of being a lake, experiencing wind, and sometimes a choppy wave? In these moments, can you connect with the very depth of the lake? And just breathing here as the lake for a few more moments until you hear the bell. And as you feel ready, allowing your eyes to open. And just noticing, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are you aware of? So as we look at applying mindfulness specifically to adolescent populations, the sense of a lake might not resonate with them. A body scan might be difficult for them. And so one of the things that we think about when we bring mindfulness to adolescent populations is how we can make these images and these practices speak to them. And so one of the things that we can do is remind them of the benefits of mindfulness. So let's just look a little bit at what happens when we are mindful. So often what happens when we flip our lid is that we go into fight, flight, or freeze, right? So we are in sort of the red area, or we're in the blue area, the very peak, when we are frozen, when we shut down, when we go numb, when we feel helpless. And what we would like to do as we are aroused, as a stressor enters into our life, as red dye enters, is to perhaps, get a little winded, right? The lake gets a little bit choppy, but then it goes back to being normative, right? We call that the social engagement space, and that's represented by the green at the bottom, so that less and less, we don't enter fight, flight, or freeze as these stressors come into our lives. We have an ability to handle it through a mindfulness practice. So one of the things that's helpful is actually just to engage mindfulness practices regularly. And there are lots of ways that we can do that. You can start the day with some deep breathing. You can boost energy in your classroom by doing a sun breath. You can help improve focus by doing some bell counting. There are lots of ways that we can become mindful and introduce mindfulness into our classrooms. We also can use mindfulness for connection. So there's a whole mindful communication series where we actually sit and just talk to someone and look at them and take them in. And then getting our mind prepared for testing or whatever else we might need to have a clear, calm, focused mind for. So in this moment, it's also important to notice what you are giving. So if you are offering a mindfulness practice, are you present? Or are you thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch later? Or are you thinking about something that happened yesterday? So often we are physically present with our bodies, but our mind is somewhere else, right? Our heart may be somewhere else. And so as you offer a mindfulness practice, being grounded as the facilitator is paramount to the success of mindfulness. So I mentioned bell counting as one of the things that you can do in your classroom, a go-to, and simply taking a bell or even using a phone app and ringing it a number of times. As you do that, asking students to count the number of times that they hear the bell. Only rule is they can't use their fingers to count, and they can't mouth the numbers. And after you ring the bell, somewhere between 18 and 25 times, their eyes will be closed while you do it. You ask, what did you hear? How many rings did you hear? And often people will get around the right number, but not quite the right number, and that's okay. It's not about being right here. It's about our ability to bring ourselves back every time we're distracted. Can we be aware of our distraction and come back to the counting, come back to the task at hand? Other ways that we can bring mindfulness to life in our classroom is to do experiential activities. And this is just a list of some suggestions here, and I'm happy to provide some additional resources on any of them. One of the things that I want to point out here are worry boxes. So having a place in your classroom when someone does experience a red dye moment, that they can go ahead and write that down and put it in the worry box and give themselves a little bit of space, a little bit of separation from that worry. It's not that it's not still there, right? But they've expressed it in some format. So what are the benefits? When we get mindfulness, or in this case, mindfulness-based stress reduction, our mindfulness increases. Once our mindfulness increases, our ability to adapt in the moment also increases, right? Our ability to cope, to withstand. Our executive functioning increases, and we become more flexible, right? We begin to be able to brainstorm alternative solutions to our problems. We also more clearly emotionally regulate when this happens. Our ability to work with difficult emotions increases, right? And our anxiety decreases. So this is a logic model that was developed by Dr. Erica Sabinga at Hopkins, who does extensive work with adolescents and mindfulness. And so this is a really helpful way of sort of visualizing mindfulness. So mindfulness can bring us into the social engagement space. That was that green bar on the bottom of a graph that we looked at a few slides ago. It can also help to increase resilience. So if we think about all of the components of resilience and building that for the people that we serve, building that for ourselves, mindfulness has a lot of connections to those. So we are able to build a positive self-image. We are able to be more positive about ourselves and also about relationships with others. It can often help to give us a sense of belonging and social connectedness. And so just thinking about how mindfulness can build resilience and build our capacity, just like that lake. So mindfulness in children, it can help with social emotional learning, academic and personal resilience, supporting attention and concentration, increasing their interpersonal skills, and increasing their curiosity, motivation, and problem solving, all essential here. And then how can mindfulness help you in your classroom? How can it help you as you advocate for adolescents? How can it help you as you're in a meeting? You are able to respond with greater creativity. You can model, right, embody mindfulness and embody curiosity, acceptance, and inquiry. Your emotional reactivity and your ability to contextualize what is happening in the moment increases. And hopefully at some point it can also help reduce burnout that we all feel just from doing the good work that we do day in and day out. So I just wanted to share as we close this definition of resilience, the ability to thrive, mature, and increase competence in the face of adverse circumstances. This requires a person to draw upon all resources, biological, psychological, and environmental. And so as we think about not only adolescents who live, who learn, but thrive, right? Their entire being thrives. Their whole being is taken into consideration. I suggest that mindfulness might be one part of that formula to build resilience. And so as you think about how you practice or implement mindfulness, think about how you develop opportunities to refocus. Think about stress reduction, how you can bring snippets of stillness into the day, how you can help to increase the resilience of yourself and those that you serve. And then also ask the people that you're working with, what do you think mindfulness is? Because if they help to build a definition of it, they're more likely to buy into it. So there are a lot of ways to be mindful. There are a lot of places where you can apply it. You can apply it on the basketball court. You can apply focus and attention in the lab, on the stage in performance. Anywhere in life, you are able to apply mindfulness. And then you can also do formal practice. But thinking about how you can bring focus and attention, awareness, to all aspects of your day and not just to when you sit down for 10 minutes and you're quiet or you do a meditation. So I am so thankful that you were able to be here for this presentation today. I hope that we just opened the window of the possibility of mindfulness and how you might include it in your own life. And I hope that the couple of practices that we did offered you some respite. We have some time for question and answer. So if anyone has them, please go ahead and submit them and we will start answering them. Okay. So there's a question here from Adria. Is there a book that you would recommend on mindfulness? And there are lots of books on mindfulness. If you are looking at just starting your journal, there is nothing better than John Kabat-Zinn's book on mindfulness, which is really about how you build a practice for yourself. It's called Coming to Our Senses. If you're looking more for adolescents, I actually will provide a resource list, because there are so many wonderful books out there that give you actual practices that you can use. Great. Well, I want to leave you with just a final thought here. Oh, this was another question. How long did it take you to master mindfulness in the classroom? So, I don't ever see myself as having mastered it, and I have personally been studying and practicing beyond sharing it with others for about 20 years. I feel like it's a practice, and so I show up every day for it, and in doing that, I learn something more. My ability to see and to hear people and to connect with them is really the beginning, right, to building the relationship for mindfulness. But, if you apply it bit by bit in your classroom, bit by bit in your life, 5 to 10 minutes to start, you will see enormous change over a period of time. But again, it's a practice. There is a question here. Is there an age that's too young for mindfulness? If you can breathe, you can be mindful. That is really my most prominent thought there. I mean, obviously, with very young children who are nonverbal, it can be more difficult. But simply placing your hand on your belly and doing balloon breath, I've been doing that with my own daughter since she was about 18 months. So it is a very there are practical ways of doing it depending on the age group to make it age appropriate. How do you deal with disruptive students when leading a class through a mindfulness activity? So we actually, before we go in to teach, we build what's called a community agreement. And so what we call that are ways of respecting each other and respecting the space that we're in while we are practicing mindfulness. And so I simply called them to the community agreement that they helped to create, that they signed on day one, and that usually brings them back to task. If necessary, I will deal with the disruption within the practice and say, you might hear someone tapping their foot, or you might hear someone giggling. Just notice how that makes you feel. Try to stay present for yourself. And there's some wonderful stories that we can also bring in that help people to figure out when they are controlling their own being and when they're allowing someone else to affect their being. And so I do a little bit of storytelling too. So I might be able to say, remember the samurai who always got distracted? In the end, was he able to help the town? And they'll know exactly what that means because we've talked about it before. So I think being able to reference stories, reference the community agreement, and then a talk afterwards as well is always really helpful, just to say, that's not what we allow when we're working here together. Is there something up for you that we need to talk about? Okay, we have 1 more minute. So any that are unanswered, I will get answers for them. So all of this is being recorded. So don't worry if yours doesn't get answered today. Could you give more examples of things to implement in the class, like worry boxes? That's a huge one, right? So there are some simple things that you can do, like journaling, right? But not just actively journaling each day and just giving them some time to express themselves in a written form. They can also draw. But before that, giving them a half an hour, 45 minutes to decorate their journals, putting on some quiet music and just saying, we just want to hear the music, and I want you to really give all your focus and attention to decorating, to what you choose, to why you choose, to the colors, to how it affects you. And so it's almost like a meditation in motion there. Some other things that you can do, you can count and arrange stones. So if you give each child 12 pebbles and just say for 5 minutes, we're just going to move these stones around and we're going to place them. Of course, if you're dealing with a group that is more impulsive, stones probably wouldn't work, but that's another option. And again, in that resource list, I will provide some books that give some excellent hands-on mindfulness activities. Okay, so I just want to check in. I think we are at our time. Do we have time for one more question? Okay. All right, so I want to thank you all for being here. Oh, we do. We have time for one more question. Thank you, Erin. Okay, so this is a great one. What would you say to a teacher that says they do not have time during class because of pressure regarding testing? So in 2011 to 2015, we did a study of 250 students in Baltimore, Maryland, and actually looked at, after the implementation of a 16-week mindfulness program, their testing scores. We were given permission from the Baltimore City Public School System to look at them, and those that were exposed to mindfulness, that got the dose of mindfulness, actually tested higher in reading and math. Their ability to place their attention, to focus in the moment, to be with themselves increased exponentially. And just with that one survey, that has opened the door to many schools and to many teachers. But we start always with teachers. So teachers are given an opportunity to experience it, to talk about it, to talk through it, and to see if it's something that they can practically apply. But I would never ask for more than 5 to 10 minutes to begin with. And then generally the teachers always ask for more. And we'll close with this one here. I am our campus lunch lady. How can I incorporate these things into the lunchroom? What a great place, because the lunchroom is such a boisterous, loud, socially engaged place, right? Students are trying to connect with each other. They're trying to impress each other. They're trying to, just kind of like take a deep breath from the day they've had so far. They might not be looking forward to something in the afternoon. And so I think that's where embodiment really comes in. So if everyone in that lunchroom is just feeling their feet on the ground, taking deep breaths as they're serving the children, that can change the environment, right? Or even when you're handing them their tray, don't forget to take a deep breath, right? They're just moments where you can kind of infuse mindfulness into the day. Or even once they get their tray, if they're at many schools, there's a teacher at every other table, or there's a couple teachers sort of monitoring what's happening in the lunchroom. If that teacher is grounded or comes over and says, we're just going to take a deep breath before we start eating, right? There's also mindful eating. So in most of the classes that I work with, mindful eating is something that we do in the first 2 to 3 weeks. So I really encourage mindful eating, even in the cafeteria, to be aware of what you're putting in your mouth, to be aware of how it tastes, to be aware of the process of swallowing and the beginning of the digestive process. And that's enormous, because once they start to place their attention there, it's often a much more settled space in the cafeteria. Thanks for that question. Thanks for taking it to a completely different environment. That was great. All right. So again, I want to thank you so much. I'm going to just remind you that there is an evaluation, and we would love for you to fill that out. Let's see here. Yes, so please don't forget to complete the session evaluation for today's session. Again, please check the website, because we will put resources on there, including books, to give you some further ways of implementing mindfulness. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you.